Yahi, retinue, and Canaan all gave way to the name Palestine. Throughout classical and late antiquity, a term used by historians to describe a period between the 3rd and 8th centuries AD, a transitional period from classical antiquity to the Middle Ages in the Mediterranean world, Europe, and the Near East, the name Palestine remained the most common. Furthermore, in the course of the Roman, Byzantine, and Islamic periods, the conception and political geography of Palestine acquired official administrative status. This work sets out to explain and contextualize the multiple beginnings and evolution of the concept of Palestine, geographically, culturally, politically, and administratively. It also seeks to demonstrate how the name Palestine was most commonly and formally used in ancient history. It argues that the legend of the Israelites' conquest of Canaan and other master narratives of the Old Testament, or Hebrew Bible, a library of books built up across several centuries, are myth narratives designed to underpin false consciousness, not evidence-based history which promotes truth and understanding. It further argues that academic and school history curricula should be based on contextualized historical facts, empirical evidence, archaeological and scientific discoveries, not on conventional opinions or the fictional narratives of the Old Testament and religio-political dogmas repeatedly reproduced in the interest of powerful elites. The celebrated English historian and Enlightenment author Edward Gibbon, writing in 1776, noted that Phoenicia and Palestine will forever live in the collective memory of mankind. Gibbon also astutely observed that the Romans, Persians, and Arabs wanted Palestine for the extraordinary fertility of its soil, the opulence and beauty of its cities, and purity of its air. Today, the idea of a country is often conflated with the modern concept of nation-state. But this was not always the case, and countries existed long before nationalism or the creation of meta-narratives for the nation-state. The conception of Palestine as a geopolitical unit and a country, Arabic bilad or Qutr, with evolving boundaries, has developed historically and continues to do so. The identity and cultures of Palestine are living organisms. They change, evolve, and develop. This work explores the representation of Palestine over time as a mixture of the perceived and conceived and the lived realities of the country. The evolving idea of Palestine is framed here within 5 basic assumptions, which also center on the principles of human agency, context, and lived experience. Palestine is the individual and collective bilad, country, in modern terms, watan, or mountain, homeland, of the Palestinian people. The indigenous people of historic Palestine, Palestine al-Tarikhiyya, and the indigenized immigrants in Palestine. The Palestinian people, individually and collectively, have a multi-faith and multicultural heritage and a multi-layered identity deeply rooted in the ancient past. Palestinian history is a house of many mansions, to echo an expression coined by the late Lebanese historian Kamal Salibi in connection with the modern history of Lebanon. The cultural pluralism of Palestine and the multi-tier identity of the Palestinians as individual and collective agencies must be situated within their evolving social, cultural, and political contexts and actual historical circumstances. The multicultural dimensions of Palestinianes and the textured polity of Palestine are grounded here in the living history and living experiences of the indigenous people of Palestine and the Palestinized immigrants in the country. Of particular interest here are the urbanization processes, the emergence of early city-states, and state formation in Palestine. Contrary to the claims about the tribal organs of the state in the Arab Middle East, this book argues that early state formation in Palestine and the wider Near East was a product of urbanization processes. These processes began in the early Bronze Age at around 3200 BC, and were associated with the emergence of great urban centers in Palestine. Stratified urban social spaces in comparison with the somewhat smaller and more egalitarian Chalcolithic localities in the country, 4000 to 3200 BC. In the course of the early Bronze Age urbanization in the great urban centers in the country, each about 100 to 400 dunams in